We'd like to welcome everyone to our council meeting this evening, and particularly those members of the public who are tuning in via the social media streams tonight. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. At an ordinary meeting of council, members of the public are invited to participate by asking questions or making submissions. The public has submitted questions to council and I will read these out during the public question time. The chair and the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate where deemed relevant. officer to whom a question is referred may immediately answer the question or take the question on notice for the next ordinary meeting. We have received a question from Mr. Stephen Galena from the District of Warborough. Our question tonight, he asks, is to supplement the vague general answer previously given to me by Council CEO Mr. Jim Nolan, will Council advise me and provide me with documents of what was the original design and constructed specification of the road pavement widths, verges, shoulders for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark Street, Kimberley Drive and Wilcar Drive, as the document for the 3 Warborough Heights Rural Living Zone roads, Mark
reduced over the period, then our group will be looking to actually to plan for the the changing in the service levels. Currently, of course, we are very much required to follow the directives and the legislation presented to us by the state and Commonwealth governments, and based on the advice from the Chief Health Officer. At the moment, of course, libraries, sporting facilities, playgrounds, skate parks and our front offices are currently closed. We anticipate that there will be some relaxing of those provisions over the coming weeks. We anticipate that libraries and sporting facilities will gradually be made available to the public. There may be some restrictions on the use and the number of people that are able to access those premises. We will need to put in place some provisions to ensure that we're able to comply with those social distancing requirements and the limits on the numbers of people able to access. We would anticipate that if libraries are able to be open, then that may be a trigger for us to be able to open our front offices into the premise here, but that will depend somewhat on the specific directions from our governments. Certainly playgrounds and skate parks are areas that we believe are likely to be able to be opened in the coming weeks, but again that will depend on the directives. Caravan parks are currently subject to some fairly strict provisions that requires us to monitor their use and reduce their use. We would be hopeful that there may be some relaxing of those provisions in coming weeks. Our economic development response, of course, is an important aspect of our consideration at the moment with the impact on our businesses. We have released provisions around our economic response, including potential for people to seek special consideration as a result of the hardship for waiving of interest and deferral of rate payments, particularly now talking about the fourth quarterly instalment of the current rates year due at the end of this month. We're looking at stimulus projects, including the delivery of a number of key projects across the Shire, and it's coincidental that our drought recovery program is in full swing at the moment, which is an opportunity to provide jobs for people in our community. And we've recently completed a tourism marketing strategy with a view to being able to provide some stimulus for our tourism sector to be able to bounce back quickly. So hopefully that, thank you for the question, Councillor Clark, hopefully that provides some flesh to the bones.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other questions or comments on those items for noting? And there being none, I will ask for those to be received. All those in favour? And received. Thank you. That brings us to item 10.2, which is the waste collection contract, the 1-year extension for this, and I will hand to... Yes.
Could I ask that when we get into conditions of the CEO, just to give us a brief update on the City Borough Ombudsman report and Council's response? We have one at this stage, please.
Thank you. Take over.
Yeah. I'm happy to wait till general business is CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Very happy to answer that question. And Councillor Clark is referring to the Ombudsman's report into the City of Ballarat, which was released in recent days. The report has been circulated to senior officers in Council. The matter has been referred at this point in time to our Audit and Risk Committee, who are scheduled to meet in the next couple of weeks. So it's part of that agenda. It's our normal practice when a report such as this is handed down by one of the oversight agencies, whether it be the Ombudsman, the Local Government Inspectorate, Victorian Auditor General. These oversight agencies provide valuable insights into appropriate governance and other aspects of council business. There's specific reference to recruitment and procurement. Matters that our council and our audit and risk committee have been giving consideration to in recent years, and we'll use this as an opportunity to review those again and to take any direction from the audit and risk committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Molly. Valid question, thank you. Any other notes? No? Brilliant. We'll move on to 10.2. Then please, the waste collection contract, and I will now hand over to Mr. Douglas Downs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of order. This report is one of the reports for noting. We're still within the reports for noting. But more than happy to take any questions. And really the premise of the report is that our current waste contract has 1 year allowable extension on it, and that was I understand the council had already made that commitment, and it was really just to inform council of that decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Downs. So that brings us to 10.3, which is our customer action requests, which is also part of our items for noting. And so we will now move through to, I might get everyone to report on all of those. We will bring us to item 13, please, which is the quarterly finance report from the 1st of July to the 31st of March. And I'll hand over, thank you, to Ms. Kathy Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The quarterly finance report is part of our regular reporting, and this report gives Council an update of the operating and capital financial performance for the 9 months from the 1st of July 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. And the report compares the current budget against year-to-date actuals for each operating programme and for all capital works in the 2019-20 financial year to date. The financial reports were prepared in consultation with the senior leadership and follow a standard format. At this stage of the financial year, Council's overall financial result is showing a projected working capital surplus of 1.277 million as at 30th of June 2020. From this surplus, $800,000 will be reserved in case of a call from the defined benefit superannuation scheme, or in the event of an unexpected expenditure such as a natural disaster, leaving an available projected surplus of 477,000. It should be noted that the reserve figure was increased from 639,000 due to the uncertainties surrounding the current COVID-19 pandemic. The net working capital surplus was carried forward from 2017-18, and 2018-19 was 514,000. I'll consider the rest of the report as read, with the conclusion that just at this stage of the financial year, Council's overall financial result is projected to be an available working capital surplus of 477,000 at the end of June 2020, and it's the officer's recommendation that Council receives the finance report for the period 1st of July 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramel. May I ask the Council to support that recommendation? With support, thank you. Councillor Clark, seconded. Councillor Ferrari. And would you like to speak to that? Councillor Clark, would you like to speak to that? No. All of those, I will ask them, all those in favour, please, show of hands, and that's carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 13.2, which is the adoption of the draft Municipal Emergency Management Plan. Again, I will hand to Ms. Kathy Bramwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to request Council consideration and adoption of the Pyrenees Shire Municipal Emergency Management Plan 2020 and associated subplans. I'll call it the MEMP for short, the Municipal Emergency Management Plan. The MEMP, including the subplans, was due for review and audit in 2020, and the review has been conducted over the past 3 years in collaboration with the agency members of the MEMP-C, which is the committee that manages the municipal plan of emergency management. And the plan was approved by the committee at its meeting on the 15th of April 2020. The draft plan is supported by several documents included as appendices, including the operational plan, which is what interprets the main MEM into operational format for council officers to follow, and that really forms the part of the critical incident management plan. It also has an updated pandemic plan in light of recent experience, and various other plans as detailed in the report. The draft plan is attached for council consideration and adoption, and the plan will be audited by the SES on the 23rd of June 2020. So in conclusion, it's recommended that Council adopts the Pyrenees Shire Municipal Emergency Management Plan for 2020 and then prepare it for audit. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Bramwell. Again, I may ask for a councillor to move that motion and support the motion and support the recommendation. I have Councillor Easton and Councillor Ferrari. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Easton, Councillor Ferrari? Any other councillors? I would just say that again, these plans are incredibly important, and we thank all the effort that goes into it and the MEPC that meets regularly to ensure that we have them fine and ready to go in the case of an emergency. Thank you very much for that. We're now at item 13.3, which is the extension. Oh, sorry, we do need to vote on that. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So 13.3, which is the extension of the lease of the Avoca Caravan Park. Again, Miss Kathy Bramwell, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval to extend the current lease for the Avoca Caravan Park for a further 12 months from the 6th of June 2020. The Avoca Caravan Park is situated on Delt property within the Pyrenees Shire Council, with the Pyrenees Shire Council acting as the Committee of Management. The property was leased to KCA Nominees Pty Limited from the 6th of June 2005 for an initial period of 15 years with a subsequent further term of 5 years agreed in 2015. The lease agreement ends in June 2020 with no provision within the agreement for any further term extensions. The reason why we want to extend the existing lease is to make sure that we can do a thorough job of renegotiating a future lease for the caravan park, and as such to give us time to do that work, we are requesting that we have approval to extend the lease for further 12 months. We have been delayed in contacting the actual caravan park owners, so I would like to change the council recommendation if I may. The current recommendation is that it's recommended that council approves extending the lease of the property known as the Avoca Caravan Park between the Pyrenees Shire Council as Committee of Management and KCA Nominees Pty Limited for an additional period of 12 months from the 6th of June 2020 to the 5th of June 2020 for the purposes of enabling council staff to undertake a review of caravan park operations and negotiation of a new lease which may or may not be with the current lessee. I would like to add on to that recommendation subject to the approval of KCA Nominees Pty Limited. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just let Jane add that. And now I'll put that to you councillors, please. Is someone happy to move that? Thank you very much, Councillor Rees. And seconded, Councillor Vance. Would you like to speak to that? Would you like to speak to that?
No questions.
Other councillors? Questions of me? No? Beautiful. We'll put that to the vote then. And all those in favour, thank you very much, Ms. Brownwell. And hopefully that can be negotiated well into the future. We're now to item 13.4, which is looking at the Local Government Act legislative change for 2020. Thank you again, Ms. Kathy Brownwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is to provide Council with an overview of legislative change with a potential impact on Council operations. The first one is the Local Government Act 2020, which was proclaimed on the 6th of April, with transition from the former Act being implemented in stages between the 1st of May 2020 and the 30th of June 2022. and a range of other legislative reform was introduced in late 2019 and early 2020, including the Gender Equality Act, the workplace manslaughter legislation, and FOI charges were gazetted for the next financial year. With regard to the Local Government Act 2020, it was proclaimed on the 6th of April, and as I said before, the gradual implementation transition on a series of dates throughout the next in excess of 12 months. The council role, powers and constitution provisions are in place as from the 6th of April 2020, which really enacted the Act, hasn't it? Delegations, governance rules, meeting processes and other governance related policy is in place from the 1st of May 2020, and the majority of that we've got until the 1st of September to actually put in place. The role of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, strategic and community planning provisions, budget and annual report requirements come into effect on the 24th of October 2020, again with a period of time to actually implement them afterwards. And all of the provisions come into play from the 1st of July 2021, with the last element needing to be in place by the 30th of June 2022. The 1st of January 2022. So we have an action plan to implement this, and we are working very closely in collaboration with the Local Government Victoria and LG Pro and one of the Maddox lawyers in trying to work to provide a consistent approach to what we implement in this regard. So the timeline requirements that we have, I have written those in the reports, which I won't go through. But as I said, what we're actually doing, we're working on preparing for general elections in October under VEC direction. Governance rules are being developed as guided by Maddox and Local Government Victoria, and should be available for council consideration and adoption in the near future. Development of these includes the need to do quite extensive community engagement, so may take a little time. Council meeting procedures came into operation as from the 1st of May. It is recommended that council meeting procedures are implemented as part of the governance rules, and they are no longer needed to be part of a local law. Currently, we have local law number 1, which governs our meetings. Maddox have advised that local laws could be amended and retained if needed to manage community attendee behaviour, but I believe that at Pyrenees this is not required. Alternatively, Maddox have recommended that the existing local law number 1, meeting procedures, go through a repeal process at the same time as the governance rules are being developed. And by this report, Council is requested to confirm that the proposal to repeal local law number 1 is endorsed. Until governance rules are adopted, the local law remains in place. The other key aspect of the early tranche of Local Government Act implementation is a revision of the Audit and Risk Committee Charter, and the Council has to re-establish the Audit and Risk Committee under the new Act. The draft charter has been prepared for Audit and Risk Committee endorsement at their meeting next week, and it will be brought that and a report to Council seeking to re-establish the committee will be brought to Council in June. The other key changes that are in place at the moment, provisions of the new Act remove the ability for Council to delegate powers directly to staff other than the Chief Executive Officer. Instead, Council must delegate duties and powers to the CEO, and then a further instrument of sub-delegation passes appropriate delegations to council staff. Maddox are preparing delegation documents that will change and update our delegation instruments of delegation documents, and they should be prepared for adoption at the August Council meeting, if not before. Section 86 committees is another big thing that's changed under the new Local Government Act, in that they will be replaced by delegated committees, or more commonly asset committees. They do remain in place until they are repealed by Council, but guidance on re-establishing these committees has been received, and new instruments of delegation are under preparation, so they will come to Council for approval in the near future. All the other documents required are in the process of development. So that's the Local Government Act. FOI charges, the fees for FOI applications and charges for time, etc. They're set by Government Gazettal each year under the Monetary Units Act. And the values for the next financial year were gazetted in April 2020 and were determined to remain the same for 2019-20, so that means fees do not increase for the next financial year. The workplace manslaughter legislation that passed Parliament on the 26th of November 2019 and is expected to come into effect on or before 1st of July. There are areas which are detailed in the report where workplace manslaughter may apply, and it has to meet all of the elements of that where the offence is proven. And it may apply even when the death occurs sometime after the relevant incident, and the example I've used there is an asbestos-related disease. Who can be charged with workplace manslaughter? It can be directors and secretaries of companies, partners, persons who participate in the making of decisions that affect a substantial part of the organisation's business, and persons who have the capacity to affect significantly the organisation's financial standing. So that probably impacts most of us in this room. Voluntary and deliberate conduct is negligent if it involves a great falling short of the standard of care. So this is really where this kind of legislation would come into play if we were found to be negligent. The other thing that establishes it is that it must actually cause death. The conduct must cause the death, and it needs to be established that that's the case. There is quite heavy penalties, 20 years imprisonment for individuals and a maximum fine of 16.5 million for body corporates. The other piece of legislation that's got a major impact on us is the Gender Equality Act 2020, which was enacted on the 25th of February. The Act aims to improve workplace gender equality across the Victorian public sector, universities and local councils, and it will hopefully lead to better results for the Victorian community through improved policies, programmes and services. The Act will did commence on the 31st of March. Will commence on the 31st of March 2021. Yes. I've given you quite a bit of information in this. The main impact on us is that we have to plan, measure and track progress towards gender equality. We're required to develop a gender equality action plan every 4 years, and will include strategies for improving gender equality in the workplace. And we will have to report publicly every 2 years on our progress. Organisations will also be required to make set targets and quotas, and they'll be set in future regulations and tailored to specific industries. We do have a Respect and Equity Working Group, which is a combination of our former Worker Act Working Group and the Child Safe Working Group. So we've amalgamated those two working groups to form one group who is now focused on prevention of violence against women, gender equity, child safety and prevention of violence and aggression in the workplace. So we are continuing to work on all of those spaces. And it's recommended that Council notes this report and the detail of legislative change being implemented, and requests that Council resolves that Council staff should take the steps necessary to repeal the existing local law number 1, meeting procedure, and replace this with new governance rules developed in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramwell. There's a lot in that, but some very good guidelines there for us. So may I ask the Councillor to move this motion? Thank you very much, Councillor Vance, and seconded Councillor Ferrari. Now, would you like to speak to that, Councillor Vance?
Not really. in the majorities of procedure, Madam Mayor, and it's something that council is addressing, so I'm quite happy to leave it sit there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam. Just a question, Mr. Brown, please. The governance rules, as I understand it, Brown, there'll be a universal set that are the same for all councils. Is that the idea that mathematics is working on? Or we have a single set for every council in the state? Is that right?
Thank you, Councillor. That is the intention. It's not mandatory to have all the same governance rules, but we are working together to create consistency of approach, so they will all be very similar. Not necessarily all exactly the same, because we may have slight differences in the way our processes work, but they're likely to be the only differences. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is just in relation to Section 86 committees. You're aware how many committees we currently have, firstly, and secondly, will the intended changes make responsibilities of those committees any more onerous or less onerous?
Thank you, Councillor. We've got 5 committees at the moment, I believe. Section 86 committees, they're all likely to become asset committees. The governance requirements is likely to reduce rather than increase, because they're going to have a very limited range of what they can be responsible for. So, and part of our endeavours will be to make them as simple as possible, so more understandable. But we've got to start communication with them yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Thank you, Councillor Eason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Bramwell, the provisions under the Act for the CEO to receive delegation. The secondary delegation then from the CEO to staff, is that something that will come through council meetings, or will that simply be an internal delegation?
Thank you, Councillor. Legally, it's an internal delegation, but as per our normal practice, it will come to council for information and endorsement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Then we'll put that to the vote. Thank you. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you so much, Catherine. That brings us to item 13.5, which is the 2019 Audit and Risk Committee's performance. Again, thank you, Ms. Cathy Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Big month this month. This report is just a report back for Council minuting on the Audit and Risk Committee performance. Council considered the performance of the Audit and Risk Committee in its Council briefing on the 18th of February, after having received the annual report from the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. So the key objective of Council is, of course, to ensure effective corporate governance. And as part of that control framework, Council has established the Audit and Risk Committee in accordance with the provisions of Section 139 of the Local Government Act 1989. And the Audit and Risk Committee's key objective is to provide independent assurance and support to the CEO and Council on the Shire's risks, control and compliance framework and its external accountability responsibilities. The Audit and Risk Committee the Audit and Risk Committee Charter currently requires the committee to report regularly and at least once per year, and that was done by the Chair in January of this year. And then the Charter further requires Council, after receiving and considering that annual report, to review the performance of the committee. To facilitate this, an assessment form was created to guide councillors and the CEO through the process. Council assessed the performance of the Audit and Risk Committee at a score of 89 out of 100, and a copy of the Chairperson's annual report for 2019 and the final form duly scored was circulated to Council for information. And the recommendation is that Council receives the information provided by the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee in his annual report, and having reviewed the performance of the committee for the past 12 months, endorses the action of the committee in the way it has discharged its responsibilities during 2019. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms Brown. May I ask for a councillor to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Reeson, and secondly, Councillor Ferrari. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Reeson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been a member of this committee on a couple of occasions, and I find it one of the important committees that we have within the council. It takes into account how we run all our areas of concern and checks on them, and brings us any reports where we're deficient. It's an important administrative and governance issue that all councils should have, and it amazes me that some councils do not.
Thank you, Councillor Reeson. Further councillors, Councillor Ferrari, can you speak to that? No? I will put that to the vote then. Thank you, councillors, and that's carried. Thank you. An important role of the audit committee then. Now we move to the Chief Executive Officer's items. Item 13.6, which is the adoption of the amended council plan from 2017 to 2021. And I'll hand to Mr. Jim Nolan. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider any submissions on the adjustments to the Council Plan 2017 to 2021, including the Strategic Resource Plan, and to adopt the revised plan. The plan is a 4-year plan to cover the term of the current Council, and the Local Government Act requires that at least once every financial year, Council considers whether or not the Council Plan requires any adjustment in respect of the remaining period of the plan. Council have an annual planning day which occurred in December last year, and again in March of this year Council held a briefing where Council considered the Council Plan and its strategic directions, and whether or not the Council Plan captured those strategic directions. It is a key strategic document that guides all of Council's activities, so it's a very important document. It was considered that there was a need to make some minor changes as a result of changes that occurred during the course of the year in particular. And therefore a draft revised Council Plan with those amendments was reported to the April Council meeting, and Council subsequently has placed the revised Council Plan on exhibition. Public notice was given and placed on Council's website. At the time of preparing this report, no submissions have been received. The changes to the plan proposed include reference to the impact and recovery of and response to the COVID-19 event, reference to the Council 2020 election, the implementation of transition provisions relating to the Local Government Act, which were spelled out in some length today by Ms Bremmel. The changes capture a number of key council capital projects, one of which being Correa Park, which Council recently entered a contract for approximately $1.5 million for the development of that residential development, as well as the delivery of other stimulus projects which were subject of government funding, including the Lexington Community Hub, Snake Valley and Avoca projects, and a number of road projects, as well as the Drought Communities program. This is an important program that is discussed in the next item on the agenda. It includes the implementation of the Local Government Rural Council Transformation Program, of which Pyrenees is a partner in that project with the City of Ballarat and a number of other councils in the Central Highlands Victorian region. The implementation of the Frontline Services Review and the long-term planning that captures Pyrenees' future, and the housing strategy and the rural land use strategy, of which Council had provided for in its draft budget. So, Madam Mayor, those changes have been made. to the revised draft council plan, and the document is now placed before council for consideration. The recommendation in the report is that council, having reviewed the council plan 2017 to 2021 in accordance with the Local Government Act, having determined that minor adjustments were needed, and having given public notice and considered any submissions in accordance with the Act, adopts the revised council plan, including the strategic resource plan, places a copy of the council plan on council's website in accordance with the Act, and provides a copy of the revised plan to the Minister in accordance with section 125 of the Act.
Thank you, Mr Nolan. So may I have a councillor please willing to move the support the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Clark. Seconded, Councillor Vance. Councillor Clark, would you like to speak to that? Councillor Vance, would you like to speak to that? No. Other councillors, comments or questions on that council plan? No, then I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's passed. Thank you for that update, Mr Nolan. We're now to item 37, which again I will hand to Mr Jim Nolan, which is in relation to the Drought Communities Program.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to inform Council about the approved list of works contained in the Commonwealth Drought Communities Program, round 1 and 2, and to seek endorsement from Council about necessary changes to the works. In 2019, Council was invited to make applications for funding of eligible projects up to a total of $2 million under the Australian Government's Drought Communities Program, having determined that Pyrenees Shire is a community that has been impacted by drought. The program documentation stated that funding will target infrastructure and other projects that provide employment for people whose work opportunities have been impacted by drought, stimulate local economy spending, use local resources, businesses and suppliers, and provide a long-lasting benefit to communities and the agricultural industries on which they depend. At the December 2019 Ordinary Council meeting, Council approved projects which are identified in this report for applications for funding under the program. Applications were subsequently made, and Council has in recent weeks been notified of the successful applications. In addition, there has been an extension granted for works to be completed by up until the 31st of March 2021. Works on a number of the projects are already well advanced, including the community engagement, survey design and procurement. One of the specific projects that Council had intended and an application was made for involved the construction of a new cabin at the Landsborough Caravan Park. Subsequent investigations have identified that there are limitations to the septic system there, and it's now been determined that it is not feasible for that project to proceed as originally planned. And Council is requested to provide direction for the reallocation of those funds to other eligible works. There are a number of options provided for Council in the report, including the reallocation towards swimming pool infrastructure, including at Landsborough, Ochre, Beaufort, improvements to associated infrastructure at the Landsborough Caravan Park, including the access road and landscaping, improvements to other public infrastructure in Landsborough, including potentially the community hall, improvements to the amenities block at the Beaufort Caravan Park, and improvements to other community halls across the Shire, including potentially cladding at the Raglan Hall. It is recommended that Council endorse the reallocation of funds that were intended for the additional cabin at Landsborough Caravan Park on a combination of options 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, with at least $65,000 being spent for works in Landsborough. And councillors, that is essentially the substance of the recommendation for you tonight. The Council endorses the reallocation of funds provided through the Drought Communities Program that were intended for the additional cabin at the Landsborough Caravan Park, to be spent on a combination of options 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 contained in this report, with at least $65,000 being allocated for works in Landsborough itself, and that the reallocation of funds be conditional on agreement with the funding body.
Thank you, Mr Nolan. Do I have a councillor happy to move that? Thank you, Councillor Clark, and seconded Councillor Eason. Would you like to speak to the reallocation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just briefly, I think it's most appropriate and it's very important that we do continue to spend money in all our little communities, and that Landsborough does get a share. It's got some very worthy projects, so I think it's quite a sensible approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eason, Councillor Farrick. On that note, then I agree too, very sensible. So we'll put that to the vote, those remaining councillors, and that will carry that. Thank you very much. That will now bring us to our item 14, our council reports and general business. And I'm just looking at Councillor Easton. Are you happy to talk to first, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a very quiet time. Meetings that we normally attend are not being held. Very little is going on in the communities. People are staying at home, which is very good news. Pyrenees Shire has not had a COVID-19 case, and we should be very happy about that. And we should continue to be vigilant in that area. I would like to say that because we're not around, things are still happening, and the staff are to be commended on the way they are handling the running of the Shire with all the impediments to the normal way of doing business. I congratulate them on continuing to make this place something we're proud of.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for being mindful. May I move now to Councillor Clark? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a very surreal time in that sense of things, and it's really nice having not had to get dressed up for nearly a month and a half. It's been really very similar in that sense. A couple of things that's been happening in my turf. So we've had a fantastic start to the season, and I think that's been a real blessing for most of the farmers in around Lexington where the fire went through. I was out with one of the landholders on Saturday for summer, planting some trees for him, and he's about 50% through his fencing, so he's got all his boundary stuff done. He's working on the internals in that kind of sense of things. A few he's been able to just stand up and get through. So they're pretty much all back on track, as I can gather from the few I've spoken to, in terms of the farms running pretty well in that sense. And I think again it's worth reflecting that the council has played a quite significant behind the scenes role in terms of its help to the community, as well as its quite upfront role in terms of the damage around the road. Having not had a major fire for some time in this area, you just forget how significant that damage is to the roadsides, the trees and those kinds of things. So again, thanks to council and council officers for the work they've done in that case. Beyond that, I think the other thing that's certainly worth mentioning is Anzac Day. And I'm pretty sure we were all at the ends of our driveways, and it was really special. It reminded me of what Anzac Day is really about. It is actually just about personal reflection and thanking those people that have done something that has certainly given us the lifestyle we have today. They're two very bright things that have come out of the last month. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. May I hand over to you, Councillor Ferrari? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Many requests have certainly been down over this trying time. Have had a few, and most of them being with by virtual means, and we're all just getting a head around that, and I think things will probably go back and we might go back to normal. But it is good to, and we've done it here at the council, to find out we can do things a different way and we can adapt and do all those things. So I've just had a number of meetings online, and I just think a couple of things I'd just like to note is that spoke to some business people in Beaufort, and certainly there's some angst about what it looks like after COVID-19 moving forward from an economic sense, and I think we're all aware of that. And I'm sure that doesn't just apply to Beaufort, it could apply across the municipality. So I think we're all going to be busy when things are relaxed a bit as councillors, and I think we're all going to have a lot of work to do. We'll have to band together and make sure people move on. And just the other thing, I'd also like to congratulate the staff on how they have adapted and been very flexible in the way they've gone about their duties, and they've kept things running as smoothly as possible, and continue to provide a really good level of service to the community. And even this evening's not all live streaming, like there's a lot of work that's gone into this, and I just thank all the staff for their efforts and their continued commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to start by congratulating you and your efforts keeping the public up to date with our electronic age. You've done a wonderful job, so congratulations. I'd like to reflect also on Anzac Day. It was very sombre. We heard the last post plate echoing through the quiet streets of Lanesborough at 5 to 6 in the morning. There were 3 or 4 people that attended the site to lay wreaths after, and yes, we're in a very different period, and the way forward is going to rely heavily on people's attitudes to do the right thing. I also would like to commend the staff for the way that we've had to accept these changes. We will get through it, I'm sure we'll get through it, but we are going to see a different world as we go forward. And the Chinese are probably going to remind us of that very quickly, the way things are going, but I'm sure we'll work our way through these things. So I've had 2 meetings in this last week via Zoom link. The first being the Tim Towns meeting, and a reminder come home to me very loud and clear there that before COVID reared its head, we had absolutely shocking bushfires both in the northeast and East Gippsland, and the backlash of that has somewhat been put on the back burner because of the COVID, but we must not lose sight of the fact that those rural communities in East Gippsland especially were just totally devastated. The East Gippsland Shire have had an estimated loss of up to $240 million in damage, 300 homes lost. The figure that was quoted by their CEO was about 50 tonnes of rubbish or burnt homes and the remnants being dumped in pits every week. So, you know, they've really got the job ahead of them. Towong in the north east, who run the Secretariat for Rural Councils, which our meeting was the next day, have found themselves in the very same circumstances, just totally devastated them. So much so that with a bit of a changeover of staff, but mostly as a result of bushfires, they're unable to carry on as the Secretariat for Rural Councils Victoria. We've addressed the situation and going about for expressions of interest to take over. There have already been 2 councils that have put their hand up to carry on, so Rural Councils Victoria is going to be able to carry on. There's no problem there. There are a lot of messages coming out around the bushfires and COVID. COVID's had a devastating effect on those councils around the coast that rely on tourism and the northeast. We've been very fortunate in Pyrenees. We did have the Lexington fire, which we were able to, I think, recover from extremely well under the circumstances. The help of the Blaze Aid people was just absolutely brilliant. Our council staff have done a good job in recovery there. Apart from that, I have nothing further to report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you all councillors, and first of all I might just carry on from that too to thank staff, and not just the staff that have been out on the roads and that and still maintaining those important works, but also the staff in the offices who their work has actually got quite busier in lots of ways because of the concern of the public there, so I thank them. I thank my fellow councillors too, and this is a great opportunity I think to note. I've actually had a number of phone calls of people thanking us thanking us for us being there, for knowing that residents are able to contact us and we're getting those messages out. I had one beautiful phone call from a lady near Snake Valley too, saying how the home help staff had asked her in ways that they could support, and she didn't quite need all the support they were offering, but the fact that they rang and checked in on them, and she said was just above and beyond what she expected at a time like this when there's so many other worries. So we get those sorts of examples. Our residents are incredibly resilient, and we're very thankful for that and their appreciation. I guess the same as everyone else, golly, this last period of time, the responses to COVID and being able to get that information out as much as possible. I also send a thanks to our communications officer, Kate Deppel, who's worked around the clock to make sure we can get those messages out there, and in a way that is reachable for all our residents. We've had letter drops go out, we've tried to use social media. We believe that's one way we can really actively get there and really authentically show ways that we can be there for our people, our residents, which is why we're sitting in these seats right now. But it has been great, those social media opportunities. Through Zoom, I've met with the Central Highlands Councils of Victoria recently. Again, a lot of it was about how we support businesses, how do we continue to look after our residents who themselves have lost those sources of incomes, all those things which I know have been prominent in the media. One very important topic that we did really focus on though was that importance of mental health and banding together. And our own local little promo has been the hashtag Pyrenees Community Can, and I think that's again showing through everything that we're doing, and we're really trying to espouse that right from the phone call to the front office to out on the road or the people that we need to support through home care. I've also met with MAV. We had the virtual mayor's meeting. Again, the focus was looking at and Councillor Banshee brought this up. There's a number of issues at the moment. There's bushfire relief, which is just so important that we continue on those things. There's looking at recycling, what we're going to do with our waste. Huge, important problems, but of course have almost been pushed aside because of the incredible impact of the pandemic of COVID. So there was definitely a focus at that MAB meeting to ensure that we're able to lobby for as much financial support that we can, and really ask the state and federal governments to assist as greatly as they can in those areas, particularly for businesses, again, to get up and running, and for the flow-on effect to residents who rely on those incomes from that. Again, from that, thinking on the business topic, we're really trying to focus and support our local businesses, and so the Shop Local campaign seems to have caught on and seems to be at least a good psychological push ready to support those businesses, as much as we're trying to push and inform everyone about our local businesses. So as soon as we can move back into those areas safely, we can get out there and support those businesses. There have been awesome little projects set up, like even the local school here had a Mother's Day stall and linked with some local businesses to be able to support them both ways. The local businesses had great little gifts that the kids could purchase or people could purchase. Those little initiatives have shown just how resilient our communities are, and I think that's fantastic. Again, in our Mount Emu ward, the farmers have had a great season. There's many blessings that we need to be focused on as well. Markets have changed, as Councillor Vance mentioned, and we've even noticed that personally, but let's work towards this. And I know that Rural Council Victoria and those other member bodies, the Victorian Farmers Federation, of course, Councillor Clark knows they're on to that and ready to respond where needed, so we want to be able to support them with information there too. Referring to Anzac Day, my goodness, what a beautiful, a very sombre time, but a beautiful way to see on social media. Snake Valley, they could hear the bugle being played through that little township too. Ourselves, we were standing at the front, but a beautiful personal touch is two of my boys are in the Beaufort Scout group, and for them to be standing at the front all kitted out, and then the next day to talk about how important that was for them and the follow-on work that they probably wouldn't have done had they just gone to a service and come back, and what they've learned about what others gave it at a totally different time in a totally different way, but what we have been asked to do in this last time period is just amazing. So again, beautiful, and for those that new generation to understand that was awesome. Again, we are going to be looking at adapting in so many ways as we move into particularly the next few weeks, where there will be changes happening quite rapidly, I imagine, as we move out. I do want to send a big thank you to our public and those of you listening tonight, because it is through you being safe, looking after each other, that we are getting through this, and the fact that Pyrenees does not have a COVID case. That's an incredible achievement, but even if there were cases, I know that people would be able to get through it because people are showing that. And again, I'll finish on our hashtag Pyrenees Community Can, and please stay safe out there, everyone listening, and those that see this live stream, and I know we'll be out there supporting as best we can as we move into more public spaces. So thank you all again. Thank you. The public, we're about to move into our confidential items, so we will resume the live stream once we finish the confidential items, but I will now move to item 15, which is closing the meeting to the public. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Seconded, Councillor Ferrari. All those in favour? And we'll now